I'm Aanchal Sharma, your educator. In this video, we are going to discuss a topic related to communication. We are going to discuss about the barriers to communication. First of all, what are barriers? Barriers are hurdles. Barriers are obstacles. These are the obstacles that we have whenever we are trying to communicate with another person. And these are ever pervasive like the noise. But it is our duty to do away with these barriers. So there are various problems and difficulties in the process of communication which often result to the breakage or entrophies in the communication process. These are termed as the barriers to communication. Communication barriers are basically the inferences or the obstacles which affect not only the transmission of idea or information but also the understanding and the acceptance of it. So you sometimes do not understand the message, or maybe it is not delivered, or it is very difficult to accept the message. So these are the different barriers. It has an effect on the entirely preventing the communication process, filtering the part of it or giving it an incorrect meaning. The three main causes of these barriers can be the deficiency seen in a sender. Maybe the sender has not chosen the proper medium to send the message, or he is not choosing, or he or she is not choosing the proper language, or maybe the language they know is not very same as the language to which they are, not the person whom they are talking to. Or it can also be that there is a lot of disruption in the message or the process of message. So these are the different deficiencies seen in sender. There can also be different deficiencies seen in the listener. Maybe the listener has a preconceived notion. Maybe the listener has an halo effect. Maybe the listener has a selective perception, selective retention, poor attention, preconceived mind. Maybe he or she is tired, there is fatigue. These are the different ways in which you can see that the communication loses its essence. Also, inappropriate means of communicating, that means the structure in which you're communicating can also go wrong. Right? So these are broadly the categories in which we see that the difficulty of communication can happen. We all know that communication is a process, and it starts with the sender, and the sender sends the message to the receiver. There is encoding being done and decoding being done, and gradually there will be a feedback. So without a feedback, there can also be a barrier to communication or a problem that can start. Then there will be encoding done and decoding done. This is the transactional model of communication, and in which a lot of problems can arise. Also, there is the ever presence of noise, that is the barrier to communication. It can be disruptions, time, or it can be the distance between the two people, wrong medium selected, etc. These are the different barriers to communication. So there can be physical and environmental barriers which are caused by time, place, space, your climate, maybe the noise or the choice of medium that you have taken. Say for example, I want to talk to my friend and I just want to ask him that are we going to meet today for a coffee? But I'm sending him an email. So is it a right manner or a right medium to talk to a friend? So as it is an informal structure, I should have called or texted him. But I wrote an email. This can create problem in my communication process. So the selection of a wrong medium, the wrong way of communicating can also create a lot of problems. Then comes the barriers that are caused because of the choice of words or the wrong medium. Then comes the semantic barriers. Semantic barriers are the barriers that are caused because of the words that you use. Sometimes there can be various connotative or denotative meaning attached to a different word, and this can cause problem. For example, I said my employee burn the CD, and she literally burned the CD. So this is what? This is a barrier that can cause problems in my communication process. There can be cultural barriers. Now, these cultural barriers are caused by the different diversities. So, our country has so many different languages, so many different cultures, and if you do not appreciate the culture of the other person, then this becomes a problem. So, acculturation is important. You need to respect the other culture. Prejudice, if made prejudice, related to the other culture, this can cause problem and can disrupt the communication process. So, preconceived notion, prejudice, or if you look the other religion as inferior, then there can be problems associated and a cultural barrier can pop up in between. Then there are some psychological or attitudinal problems, which is because of the mood of a person, attitude, or maybe the relationship with other person. Maybe your mother scolded you today. Because of this, you are not talking properly to your friends. So this becomes a barrier, that is the psychological or an attitudinal barrier. Then comes the barriers caused by various perception of reality. Maybe the levels of understanding and comprehension is different, right? So there can be different semantic barriers. There can be different barriers related to perception, related to attitude, related to what? Related to the different climatical conditions or the physical nature of the selection of medium that you have. So the semantic barrier, one very important semantic barrier can be the jargons also. What if you are using too many technical terms and the other person is not aware of those terms, right? So these are the different barriers associated with the communication process. So we'll be studying about the physical and environmental barriers, psychological barriers, semantic and language barriers. We have personal barriers, emotional barriers, psychosocial barriers, or you have the socio-psychological barriers, then you have the cultural barriers, and later comes the organizational barriers, right? So these are the different barriers. In this video, we'll quickly jump upon them, but in the class, we have studied them and we'll be studying them in greater detail, right? So in greater detail, I'll give you the examples also, and then we'll see the barriers. But here, let us see quickly the different barriers. So first of all is the personal barrier. Personal barrier can be the attitude of the person or the opinion. If I know that that person, if I have a preconceived notion that that person is not a good person, then this will disrupt my communication process. These are the attitude problems, or these are the different opinions that I have formed about the person. Then lack of self-confidence can also be a personal barrier. Maybe I am not a good communicator and I stand on the stage and start to fiddle with my hands. So this lack of confidence will, as it is, show my audience that she or he is not a good communicator. Then emotional barriers. So your emotions always come in between when you are talking. Not only cognitive attitude of a person is important, but it is the emotional affective study that is also important. We know that there are three domains. We have the psychomotor, cognitive, and we have the affective domain. So there can be different barriers related to emotions. Blocked mind. Maybe I'm not ready to understand. Maybe I'm too scared to talk to my boss. There can be bias and prejudice. I have already seen or already decided that that person is not a good person. Maybe I am too empowered by my own emotions and I'm not able to communicate. Maybe I'm too scared to go and talk to my teacher and ask doubts. These are all included in the emotional barriers. Then comes the socio-psychological barriers. These are the barriers like the selective perception, selective attention, selective retention. These are important terms, and in the paper, these are definitely asked. So what is selective perception? Selective perception means it is up to me. What is my perception? And I will listen to the communication only on the basis of that. Selective attention. I know that only mathematics is important for me and communication is something I can handle at the end. So I won't study communication. But at the end, I realized that about 5 questions were asked from communication. So this is what? This is a gap that I have created. This is because of the selective perception, selective retention, and selective attention that I paid to it. Then comes the status consciousness. Maybe I'm too status conscious and I cannot communicate with the people who are higher or maybe lower to me. Then prejudice. or I have created preconceived notions about someone, or comes the halo effect. So what is the halo effect? So you must have seen when any god is there, or maybe you must have seen Buddha, there is some yellow light that is coming behind Gautam Buddha. So what is this? So this yellow light is the halo effect. You sometimes see the person, maybe this person has done something good to you, so you will do away, you will not realize that there are negative qualities also associated with this person, and you'll only see the positive attributes. While if one person may have done something wrong to you in the past, you have this halo effect that person is a devil, and you will always see that person as a devil in your life. So this is halo effect. Also, sometimes you can discriminate because of physical appearance and can cause problem in your communication process. Then comes cultural barrier. So the culture shapes the way we think and the way we behave as well. Each group categorize on the basis of nationality, ethnicity, race, religion, etc. are there, has its own distinctive culture. So culture differences often cause communication differences. So it is important that we pay attention to the different values, different traditions and different genders, and we all live together. So this is important. Then comes your organizational barrier. So in an organization also, there can be a lot of problems. Why? Maybe hierarchical structure. Maybe the structure is so long that the Chinese whisper game is being seen here. Or maybe the loss of communication happens. Or maybe delayed communication is seen because the chain is so long. Maybe the rules and the regulations are very rigid. Maybe the hierarchical positions are very rigid. Maybe the organizational facilities are very limited. That is why the people are not interested to come to office, or it can have a very complex structure. So there can be different organizational barriers. A complex organizational structure, too many levels in an organization, time and timeliness. So it is important to have fixed working hours as well, right? So now comes the physical barriers. Physical barriers, or the barriers in which environment play a very important role. For example, noise. For example, I am teaching you, right? I am teaching you and there is a lot of noise at the back. There is some music being played. So will you be able to listen to what I am teaching? So this is why noise, the minimum amount of noise in the class is important. Otherwise, it can become a barrier. Time and distance. Maybe I'm talking to my friend and I know that he or she is living in Australia. It becomes very difficult because the time zone also changes. Then there are defects in the communication system. Maybe your Wi-Fi is not working and you need to communicate to someone. Then there can be wrong selection of medium. Just example I was giving you in the beginning. I'm talking to my friend for a cup of coffee and I am emailing him, right? Then there are the defects that are there in your psychosocial defects that are seen, like the murmuring or the stammering or the defects in the hearing are also seen in the physical barriers. Then comes the language or the semantic barriers. Very important, and questions are always asked from semantic barriers. They can be words with different meanings, like the sun, or they can have same spelling, different meanings. They can have sound can be same, meanings can be different. So this can cause problem. Then we can have faulty translation. That can be a problem. Unclarified assumptions. The other person never clarified the assumption and that girl literally burned the CD. Right, so these can be problem. Denotation and connotation. Then there can be the technical jargon and there can be the bad expressions that are being used. Okay, so the language is the main medium of communication and the words are its tools. Language proves to be the barrier at different levels, such as the semantic, that is at the meaning level, at the syntactic, that is at the grammatical level, and the phonological, that means at the pronunciation, and in the annotation part or in the pitch part, right? And finally comes the linguistic, that is across the languages. That language can have different barriers. There can be jargons or unfamiliar words, difference in language, or there can be words of two kinds. There can be the same word is used in different contexts, giving rise to totally different meaning. A word like hard, for example, can be used in different ways. Hard chair, hard heart, hard drink, having hard time. All of these have different meanings attached to it, right? So these are the different semantic barriers. I hope you understood. Then comes your psychological barriers. The psychological barriers are the barriers that are inside your brain. These can be lack of attention, there can be premature evaluation, it can be poor retention, loss by transmission, distrust that you have on another person, or the different emotions that are associated. So it can be prejudice, halo effect can also fall under it, self-image and different perception, closed mind, status, and inattentiveness and impatience are few barriers that we have. Now this is a question that I have for you, a practice question. So this question says, identify the barriers of communication in the list given below. Time and distance, bypassed instructions, encoding of thoughts and ideas, decoding of thoughts and ideas, logical sequences. So I'm pretty sure that we all know the answer by now. It is the time and the distance, which is a physical barrier, and the bypassed instructions. The person has not given the instructions properly. This can also cause a lot of problems. So this says that A becomes the right answer. These are the barriers to communication, right? So I hope you understood the different barriers to communication. You understood that there can be different barriers which are caused because of the environment, because of the wrong medium, because of the weather, because of the time, place, space, noise, etc. There can be barriers which is caused because of the semantic, which is associated with the language. Then it can be cultural, organizational, psychological, attitudinal, or the physiological barriers. So these are the different barriers that we see, and our role should be to eliminate these entrophies, eliminate these obstacles and distractions so that the proper communication can happen. So I hope you liked the video. This was a quick revision related to the barriers to communication. See you in my class, because there we are going to study this topic in greater detail, I will be providing you with the pictures, with the proper notes, and this will make things more clear. If you have any doubt, you can write it in the comment section and I'll surely reply to you. Thank you.